Have you ever stopped to wonder why, even on a digital screen, we're still typing on discrete, separate pages? The legendary author Jack Kerouac actually hated this. He famously taped his pages together so he could write his absolute masterpiece, On the Road, in one continuous, uninterrupted scroll. He wanted to celebrate the unbroken, associative magic of human thought, which, flows a lot like a river. But historically, that flowing stream got chopped up and trapped into the rigid, discrete logic of pages and computer code. So how exactly did that happen? And is modern AI finally helping us break free? Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unpack exactly that.
Here is a quick look at the roadmap for today. We are tracing the fascinating evolution of text, starting from the ancient scroll to the codex, looking at the medieval panoplia system, exploring goldfarb and document markup, crossing what's known as the semiotic bridge, and finally ending up at AI and the modern stream.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, from scroll to the codex. We're traveling back to ancient Rome. They eventually hit a breaking point where they demanded that their fluid, unwritten customs be frozen into permanent, structured writing. This brings us to a massive historical shift around 500 AD. We literally abandoned the continuous, one-sided scroll, which, ironically, is the exact format Kerouac so desperately wanted to bring back centuries later. We traded it for the Roman Codex. The Codex gave us discrete pages, it was compact, it was double-sided, and it fundamentally rewired our relationship with information. Basically, we went from navigating a continuous river of text to flipping through a segmented, bounded container.
Historically, humanity developed this growing obsession with, quantization. Just look at the timeline. From the unwritten Roman ius being formalized into the 12 tables, to the later publication of the Jus Flavianum, we were actively locking fluid ideas into distinct, easily navigated containers. And why? Because structure prevents the arbitrary interpretation of laws by the ruling classes. It firmly locked down meaning.
Moving right along to Section 2. The medieval Picaccia system. Let's fast forward to the Middle Ages, where this quantization really kicks into overdrive. European universities were suddenly facing an explosive demand for legal textbooks, and the agonizingly slow method of monks copying whole books cover to cover simply couldn't keep up.
So, to bypass that massive bottleneck, universities invented the Parsha system. Think of it like treating the written word as a modular assembly line. By dividing an authorized master text into standardized sections, this system laid the very early groundwork for exact, pinpoint citation.
Instead of one monk laboring over a single book for months, the text was broken down into rigid steps. A master text was authorized, chopped up into pieces, and rented out so dozens of scribes could copy it all in parallel. It was incredibly efficient for sure, but it thoroughly shattered the single continuous flow of the traditional scroll into highly quantized, distinct chunks.
All right, Section 3, goldfarb and document markup. Let's jump to the late 20th century. This historic drive to break text down hits the ultimate digital bottleneck, which is the early computer.
As computing absolutely exploded, Charles Goldfarb introduced SGML in 1981, which laid the foundation for the Document Object Model, or DOM, that we still use constantly today. This was really the ultimate quantization of language. We were taking messy human text and caging it into explicit computer-readable tags. We're talking descriptive and procedural markup designed for rigid, universal deterministic processing.
The scholar Alan Raniere pointed out something super fascinating about this digital shift. He realized that markup tags aren't just passive technical indexes. They are actually sophisticated linguistic commands. They operate in the imperative mood, acting as strict, non-negotiable orders that dictate exactly how a deterministic machine must process and display human language.
Which leads us to Section 4, crossing the semiotic bridge. The really crucial point here is how this heavily quantized code acts as a totally necessary bridge between our messy, associative human brains and rigid silicon chips. We can actually view modern text, things like JSON or Python, as a kind of divine script. It acts as a bijective semiotic bridge. Now think of bijective simply as a perfect one-to-one translation layer. It meticulously maps the continuous, swirling flow of human imagination directly into the discrete, quantized electrical packets required by a machine's arithmetic logic unit, or ALU. Think of human cognition as OS alpha.
It's our primary internal operating system, highly associative, deeply intuitive, and completely nonlinear. But to actually command a computer, that continuous Kerouac-style flow must be squeezed through this rigid textual bridge to successfully interface with a deterministic machine. The philosopher C.S. Peirce practically predicted this. He outlined how an abstract human thought becomes physical action through 3 phases of signs. Put simply, an idea in your head becomes a symbol on a screen, which then translates into a physical, executable voltage on a silicon substrate. Our flowing ideas are quite literally translated into automated, physical electricity.
And finally, Section 5, AI and the Modern Stream. Just when we think we've mastered this intense, discrete quantization of language, modern artificial intelligence is flipping the script entirely, returning us right back to our ancient roots.
It's a fascinating historical irony, really. Ancient academia and medical scholarship eventually moved from fluid, word-of-mouth variants into fixed, rigid serializations, very much like early computer code. But today's AI interfaces, they're doing the exact opposite. They are unquantizing our interactions.
Open-source tools like the Gemini CLI are bringing generative power directly to your terminal. By operating through an interactive REPL loop and utilizing Unix pipes, we are returning to a continuous, unending stream of information. It acts just like a modern digital scroll, echoing Jack Kerouac's taped-together pages, rather than forcing us into static, discrete outputs.
Consider how Meta's LLM architecture actually operates under the hood. The decode worker literally streams tokens sequentially back to the user. It creates words one at a time, exactly like a flowing human thought pouring onto a page, rather than dumping a pre-rendered, static block of text all at once. Similarly, OpenAI's Python SDK generates chunked responses. It outputs a single word at a time dynamically instead of making you sit around waiting for a completed, locked-in paragraph. It acts as a modern-day Babelfish, translating machine logic back into a continuous, uninterrupted flow of human information.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. We spent centuries breaking text into discrete chunks, from the codex to the Patriot system all the way to the digital DOM. But is the modern AI stream finally allowing machines to think in the continuous scroll of human imagination? Are we finally crossing back over the semiotic bridge, leaving the discrete page behind to reunite with the flowing river of human thought? It's a massive paradigm shift to consider. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.